Hello.
Hey.
All right. So let's just get started.
Is
First
your video recording?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Okay. So today is the 16th of April, and name is Justin Fossen. What is your birthday?
June 16th, 1975.
All right. Okay. All right. First question. What war and branch of service did you serve in?
What branch of service?
Yes, and war.
Well, I served in the Army, and I was in both the Afghanistan and Iraq wars.
What was your rank?
Staff sergeant.
Awesome. And where did you serve geographically?
During the whole time I was in?
Yeah.
Well, after my training, I was in the National Guard, so I was just at home. I was in Utah, but when I was activated, I served in New York, Afghanistan, and Iraq. Hey, hang on just a second, can you?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that.
You're good. All right. So you were just you just made a reference to your training. You want to talk about that for a second?
Sure. I was in training from 1997 to 1999, and most of that was Arabic language school out in Monterey, California.
Cool. Do you have any funny or cool boot camp training experiences? Anything stand out in your mind?
Sure. So it's probably my second or third night there. I had just been assigned to my drill sergeants, and we were just getting our gear. We'd just been assigned to barracks. So when you first get there, they put you through processing where you get all your uniforms and stuff, and they keep you there for a day or two, and then they assign you to your drill sergeants, and then you actually go and move into the barracks. Anyway, I got my stuff, went to my room and or my bay where I was bunking with a bunch of other people, and realized I only had one sheet. So I went to ask my drill sergeant for another sheet, but it was kind of a complicated process to even go and talk to him. So I was so flustered by it that I accidentally called my drill sergeant private, and he didn't like that a whole lot. So in the military, when your drill sergeants work you out, you know, they make you do a bunch of exercises. We call it being smoked.
Mm-hmm.
And he probably smoked me for 2 hours, and that was the night before our first PT test.
Jeez.
Needless to say, I didn't pass my PT test the first time because I was pretty wrecked.
Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Huh.
But I did make up for it. I had another drill sergeant who was applying for medical school, and he had to fill out all the forms by hand, but his handwriting wasn't very good. So he had me fill out all his forms, and anyway, he never really gave me a hard time after that.
So that's how it works in the military, huh?
Yeah, kind of.
Funny.
Yeah. You know, they do lay into you a lot, but once you realize it's mostly a mental game, it's not too tough. It's mostly physically challenging.
Mm-hmm.
as long as you get the mental part of it. But I mean, there were some people that just crumbled at the mental stress that they would put you under.
So how did you get past that?
I mean, it was pretty obvious that it was just a mental game, that they were trying to break you down and give you impossible tasks. So once you realize that it's an impossible task that you've been given, you just do your best, and then you know that you're going to get smoked. So, you know, you don't fall apart because they've given you an impossible task. You just do your best and realize that at the end of the day, they're just going to physically work you out and make you feel like you've failed the task. So, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, my battle buddy there, the guy that I was assigned to be, you know, to work with, he was a huge stress case. Totally fell apart.
Huh. So he had a hard time with the whole impossible task thing, I'd imagine.
Yeah, there was a time they gave us like 2 minutes to clean our barracks, which is an impossible task, and his locker was a mess because he hadn't kept it clean.
Yeah.
He just lost it and started tearing stuff out of his locker and throwing it on the floor. It was awesome. Anyway, kind of had to try and talk some sense into your buddies.
Yeah, I'd imagine. So, why did you join the military?
Well, I served an LDS mission and loved it and loved the languages that I learned. I'd taken German through junior high and high school, and then I learned Arabic, and then I learned Italian on my mission. And then when I got back from my mission, I thought it'd be great to learn another language and serve my country, and you know, get the military to help pay for school. So that's really why I joined. I kind of wanted to have another language and have some experience.
Cool. So, why did you pick the Army as opposed to another service branch?
Yeah. You know, I talked to a couple of the different branches, and I don't know. Honestly, I can't remember why I finally settled on the Army. I did decide that I wanted to do National Guard because I wasn't thrilled about being full-time military. So the Utah Army National Guard seemed like a good idea. I think looking back, I probably would have given the Air Force more of a heavier weight, you know, in my decision making, but it's just based on my military experience, you know, my deployments. The Air Force takes really good care of their people and has a lot of stuff the Army doesn't have. So, but the Army was good to me. It was good.
Good. All right. So, do you recall your first days in service?
In basic training or what?
No, after your basic training.
Well, I was in the Guard, so most of my time was spent in drills, just 1 weekend a month.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, my first few months, I joined in September of 1996, and I didn't actually go to basic training until February. So the first few times I even had experience in the military was just like a drill weekend. And I remember the first time I walked in that facility down in Provo, because that's where my drills were. I had my military uniform on, but I had no idea how to wear it. I hadn't been through basic training, and nobody really ever taught me how to wear it. So I remember my best friend and I joined at the same time. So we drilled together, and we went to basic training together, went to language school together. They basically locked our contracts in so that we did everything together.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, we walked into the National Guard unit down in Provo, and we had our shirts unbuttoned, and anyway, we're just totally sloppy. We weren't really in uniform at all, and so like the second we walked in, they laid into us and told us we needed to pull ourselves together, and this is what we needed to do. And I remember being really embarrassed because I had no idea what was going on.
That's funny.
It was awesome.
I bet. Do you remember any of your instructors particularly well? Like, does anyone really stand out in your mind as a good mentor? Or?
In basic training or Arabic school? Or any of them?
Well, yeah, any of them. How about that?
Yeah, actually, the ones that I liked the most were the ones that I had after basic training and after Arabic school. Then I went to actually learn how to be an interrogator, and that was down in Arizona at Fort Huachuca. So it's like right down on the Mexico border almost. And my instructors were really good down there. Most of them hadn't had actual interrogation experience. There were some that did though, and they were just really sharp, smart people. I really enjoyed that school. It was really intense. It was, I mean, like Arabic school, there were a lot of people that failed out. Arabic school, there were about 80% of the students who started who failed.
Wow.
So only about 20% of us made it through. And then about, I don't know, probably half of the students in the interrogation school failed out. So if you failed out of anything in your training, then they would just reassign you wherever they felt that they wanted you. You didn't really have a choice of where you'd go. So it was important to me that I made it all the way through.
Yeah, because it was important to you to do the language thing, right, with Arabic.
Yeah, and I really wanted to be an interrogator. I thought that would be really cool. Back to your question, though, was there one instructor that stands out in my mind? Yeah, there was one guy actually in my Arabic school who was a native speaker. I mean, he's an excellent linguist. And it was funny because he would be teaching our classes, and then suddenly he'd start growing a beard, which in the military you just don't do. And then he'd disappear for a couple of weeks, and then he'd come back, and like nothing ever happened. So we knew he was doing some pretty cool covert operations out in the Middle East somewhere, but he couldn't talk about it.
Right. That's so cool.
Yeah.
So what was your first? Oh, never mind. Hold on a sec. Sorry. Do you remember the first time that you got deployed?
Yeah.
Can you tell me about that? Can you just tell me about your first deployment a little bit? Sure.
So you would have been, let's see, you would have been 3 years old when, it was right after 9/11. It was, I don't remember if it was the same day that they called me. I think it was probably the same day, or maybe the next day. But within 3 or 4 days, I was out in New York, and it was a pretty heavy feeling out there. I remember not being really worried about going out, but the threat of terror strikes was still pretty real. There were a lot of times we had to evacuate. I was working in the federal building in downtown New York. It's about 8 blocks from the World Trade Center, and the World Trade Center was still burning. There was a really thick black electrical smoke in the air, and there were literally thousands of missing persons posters all over the city. There really weren't that many people in the city. Most people tried to leave if they could. So we were some of the only people down there, and just working on trying to track down potential terrorist cells and working with the FBI in New York to do it, and NYPD.
Cool. did 9/11 play a role in you? Well, I suppose it wouldn't have played a role in you joining the military, right? Because you were already in.
Right. Yeah, I joined in '96, and there really wasn't a whole lot going on. We had a couple things in 1998 that happened that really didn't impact me, but yeah, when 9/11 came around, that totally changed everything for me.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, as an Arabic linguist interrogator, I didn't really do much, and I probably would have just done weekend drills for the rest of my enlistment. But when 9/11 happened, Arabic linguists, number one, were one of the hottest commodities in the military, and then to be an interrogator, we got really busy when everybody started going into Afghanistan.
And you yourself went into Afghanistan, right?
Yeah.
So did you go there first? Or, after New York?
Yeah, I went there. So I was in New York from September to the end of November, almost December, in 2001. And then I went home for a few months, and then by about April of 2002 is when I was deployed to Afghanistan.
And so as you got off the plane, what was your first kind of reaction?
In Afghanistan?
What's that?
In Afghanistan?
Yes. That might be a hard question.
No, that's okay. I think it starts before that. I mean, you get your orders and you know you're going into a war zone, and frankly, you don't know if you're coming back. So you try and get all your stuff in order at home and tell your family goodbye, and it still doesn't really sink in. I don't think most of the guys aren't super excited about going. At least in my unit, they weren't just dying to go, but we all felt like, number one, we had a duty to go, and number two, we did want to contribute any way that we could, and so, we went, and because we were called to go. But you get on that airplane, you spend a couple of days flying across the world, and you're in a military aircraft and going into Afghanistan, and I think I've told you this before, but you're flying in, and you're getting close to the airfield, so then they cut the lights, and the airplane just suddenly takes this nosedive down. It's to avoid any rocket attacks. So you're flying with pretty high altitude, and then they just nosedive right down onto the airfield, and that's kind of when it sank in for me that this was real and it was dangerous, and there's kind of a heavy, I don't know, it's just kind of a heavy burden you carry the whole time while you're there, because anything could happen anytime.
Yeah. So, so you mentioned you had to dive down to avoid rocket attacks. Was danger just like kind of an always thing? Like were you always worried about getting blown up?
Well, we had to worry about rocket attacks. We had to worry about snipers. We had to worry about prisoners in our detention facility getting away, or I mean, and it's just not like anything that you'd ever lived through in the United States. At least not not in Utah. We don't live in a dangerous area. We don't fear for our lives. We don't have to carry a weapon with us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and all of that changes when you get into a war zone and you're packing around an M16 or a 9mm with you all the time, and you can't use a regular flashlight because it's there's a high threat of snipers taking you out if they see your flashlight. It just becomes very real and heavy. I think that's really why a lot of those guys see a lot of action. I wasn't ever on the front lines. There were times when I was out in the community doing counterintelligence or, acquiring stuff from the locals or making connections or whatever, working with the police forces. But, I didn't see a whole lot of action. There were a couple times that I was in some pretty precarious spots, but even not seeing action, I guess my point is there's still a pretty heavy burden of stress. I think that's why most people, if not everyone in the military, suffers some PTSD
because of the stress involved in that.
Yeah, I'm just living in a constant, maybe not fear for your life, but a constant state of awareness where you have to be hyper vigilant 24/7. It just creates a lot of stress.
Yeah. Wow. So what did a typical day look like for you? Like, what did you have kind of a routine?
Yeah. We'd get up first thing and have breakfast. They had tents where they'd serve us breakfast. It was usually a hot breakfast. And we'd get up pretty early. We were up by about 6 or so. And then we'd get over to the detention facility where we'd have a morning meeting together. Probably around 7 or so in the morning. And then, for me, my day was kind of a mix of reviewing interrogation plans and reading and reporting. I was the reporting NCOIC, so the non-commissioned officer in charge of reporting. So every interrogator report that left the facility went through me first. So I would edit reports, or I would, well, not necessarily take things out, but send things back to interrogators for editing, or ask them if there was obvious stuff that was missing from the report based on what I read. But I also reviewed all of their interrogation plans. So before they went into the booth, I'd read all their plans. We'd talk about them. I was in charge of the interrogation facility at night for our night shift. So I was working a 16 or 18 hour day. And then I did a lot of interrogations myself. I was fortunate enough to be one of the higher ranking guys in the facility, so I got to choose the prisoners that I would interrogate. And I loved it. I loved just about every minute of it.
Really?
Yeah. There wasn't a whole lot else to do besides what we were doing there for our jobs. I mean, we could go to there was a tent where they would show movies, and they had exercise equipment and things, but I don't know, I just loved what I was doing so much, I'd spend most of my time in the interrogation facility. As far as meals go, so I told you we had a breakfast in the morning, and then we had, they'd serve us dinner too, but our day was so long, I mean, we'd be up for, 16, 18 hours, so we'd have an MRE, those bagged meals.
Oh, they're awful.
We pretty much lived on them. I had 2 of those a day.
Wow.
So we'd have one of those for lunch, and then we'd have kind of a second dinner late in the evening. But that was my typical day. We were really lucky, because in our facility it was such a high priority, I guess. It was such high visibility, and a lot of information was coming out of our facility that we had people from the FBI, we had people from Central Command, we had all kinds of people, CIA. They all were based in our facility, and so we actually had access to a satellite phone through some of those other organizations. So I got to call home at least once a week, if not, a couple times, 2-3 times a week. Later on, I mean, like right now in the war, they've got it's not tents anymore. They've got actual cities built, and guys aren't sleeping in tents on the dirt like we were. They've got restaurants, they've got Pizza Hut,
Jeez.
other stuff now, but you know, they can use the phones pretty much any time. But when, you know, early on we couldn't. We could schedule a time, I think once a week, on a landline to call home. But I was lucky. I got to talk to you guys quite a bit. I couldn't tell you much, but I got to talk to you at least.
Really? So were there certain things that you were told not to tell us, or?
Well, we couldn't talk about almost anything. Like I couldn't tell your mom what I was doing, who I was talking to, what information was you know, available, unless it was something that she would watch on CNN or the news somewhere. We couldn't really talk about it. So.
Wow, you were really limited in your communication then.
Yeah. I couldn't even really talk to her about. She had no idea where I was going. I couldn't talk to anybody else about where I was going, where I was. So it was, you know, it was all classified.
So what did you do to entertain yourself?
Well, like I said, there were movies available. I'd go over there once in a while, but some of the guys would buy bootleg Chinese movies off the street. There were kids that would run around selling DVDs, and I think those kids were probably the richest people in Afghanistan at the time.
Really?
Yeah. Because, I mean, a family in Afghanistan would bring in maybe a few $100s a year, and these kids were selling DVDs for, you know, $5 a pop, $3 to $5, and, I mean, they were making bank as far as their living standards were concerned.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Do you recall any, sorry, switching gears a little bit, do you recall any particularly funny or unusual thing happening? And this could be for your whole military experience.
Well, I had some pretty funny stuff happen in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I told you I ran the facility at night, and I've told you the soup can story.
Yeah. Would you mind telling that again?
No, sure. So there were times when we were just trying to keep a detainee awake. We called. Yeah.
Can you just finish up this one story? I really need to take Hayden before there's no daylight.
Sure.
So he could. Are you close to?
I don't know.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so really quick, we were trying to keep a detainee awake, and one of the interrogators was in with him, and he totally ran out of stuff to talk about or try and say to him. And so, as I walked past, I was just doing my rounds, walking past the different rooms, and I looked in and saw him yelling ingredients off a soup can. Because, I mean, he didn't speak English. He had no idea what the guy was talking about. He was faced away from him, and anyway, just kind of a funny situation.
That is funny.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for your time. I really appreciate this. Thanks.
Yeah. Let me know if the video doesn't work out, or if you need anything else.
Yeah, we'll do.
Okay.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Kate.
Yeah.
Bye.
Love you. Bye.